got my haunted house out for the Halloween episode. I don't have anywhere to put it. Hi friends! Welcome to Organic True Crime with Sydney Hopes, where I talk about true crime or spooky stories. Since it's spooky season, today we have a really fun one. It's a two-parter kind of. I'm going to talk about the history of trick-or-treating and also the history of jack-o'-lanterns. It's just fun Halloween story time. Trick-or-treating. So we know trick-or-treating, you dress up in your costume if you're young enough and you walk around to people's houses and you ring their doorbell or knock and you say trick-or-treat and they give you candy, right? Yeah. So this is basically a combination of a few different cultures' celebration of honoring the dead, the day that they would honor the dead, and it's just kind of morphed into getting candy. Throughout the years. It mostly came from Ireland, England, Scotland area. So some early examples of trick-or-treating start with around in the Middle Ages, when there was something called souling, where poor people would visit wealthy people's homes and they would pray for the homeowner's dead, and in exchange the homeowner would give the poor people food and sweets, and that was called souling. There was also something called mumming, where people would dress up as ghosts or ghouls or devils or what have you, and they would perform and people would give them food or money. A lot of it started out with money and then moved to food somehow. I don't know. And then there was also something called guising. I think I'm saying that right. I'm assuming it's like disguising. Oh. This was more in Ireland. And this is where people would dress up in costumes and perform, and people would give them fruits, nuts, or coins in exchange for their performances. And then we have the British tradition of Guy Fawkes Day. In the early 1600s, there was a man named Guy Fawkes who was executed on November 5th for being involved in plans to blow up British Parliament. And after this, to commemorate Guy Fawkes, every year on November 5th, people in England would hold bonfire night, where they would basically build effigies of Guy Fawkes and have giant bonfires and have Burning Man of Guy Fawkes. And nowadays, our trick-or-treating basically came from British settlers and Irish settlers coming to America and combining their traditions and somehow turning it into trick-or-treating. The basic tradition that I explained before of dressing up in costumes and going door to door in your neighborhood and asking for getting candy has pretty much been practiced since the 1800s. There were a few dips in history, times like World War II, when there was a sugar ration, and the Great Depression. People couldn't really afford to buy candy for the neighborhood children. Understandable. But in the 1950s, there was actually a Peanuts comic about trick-or-treating. And there was also a Disney comic with Daffy Duck's nephews about trick-or-treating. And it's thought that this kind of saved the tradition and brought it back and made it popular again. And we still do it today. I just thought this was interesting because I was thinking about it the other day with trick-or-treating coming around. As far as I can remember, it's always been a thing. And movies, there's old movies that you think of that have trick-or-treating and Halloween, and old comics that you think of that have trick-or-treating and Halloween, and you always see those pictures of creepy, old-timey Halloween costumes. So I started wondering, how old is trick-or-treating? How long have people been doing this? And how the heck did that get started? Who was like, hey, let's send our kid out in a ghost costume to our neighbors and ask for food? So I thought it was fun to go back and see where it came from. The history of the jack-o'-lantern. I was thinking about this one because I used to like to carve pumpkins. Now it's just a crazy mess and I like to paint them instead. But I was wondering, where did that come from? Who thought, I'm gonna cut up this pumpkin and put a scary face in it and stick a candle in it, right? And I knew that I had heard at some point that they started as turnips and somehow became pumpkins, but that was all I had ever really heard. So I decided to look into it, and it's actually really interesting. It comes from an Irish myth about Stingy Jack. So as the story goes, Jack invited the devil to have a drink with him. And the devil agreed, and they had a drink together. But old Stingy Jack didn't really want to pay for these drinks, so he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin and to use that to pay for their drinks. So the devil agreed, and he turned himself into a coin. But then Jack decided he didn't really want to use this coin to pay for his drinks. He was just going to keep it. So he decided to keep it next to a silver cross, which would apparently keep the devil from being able to change into anything other than a coin. And then he decided to use this as leverage on the devil, and he said, okay, I'll let you go. I'll let you turn yourself back into whatever you want, as long as you promise two things. One, you have to leave me alone for a full year after this. And two, if I die, you can't take my soul. You can't claim it. And the devil agreed, and Jack released him. And he did follow up on his word. He did hold on to his word. The devil did not bother Jack for a full year after this. But in that year, Jack had a lot of time to come up with a new plan. So a year later, the devil returned to claim Jack, and Jack convinced him to climb into a tree and to pick a piece of fruit for him to eat. And the devil agreed, and he climbed into a tree, and Jack carved a cross into the tree, trapping the devil in the tree. And he says, I'll let you go. I'll let you free from this tree, but only if you give me 10 more years of being left alone. And the devil agreed, so Jack released him. And before those 10 years were up, Jack died. And because of all of his stingy and tricksy ways, he was not allowed into heaven. And because of his agreement with the devil, he was not allowed into hell either. So instead, Jack was forced to roam the earth eternally with only a lamp carved out of a turnip with a burning piece of coal inside of it. So this became Jack of the Lantern, and people in Ireland would carve faces into a turnip and put a candle inside and leave it in a window or on their porch to keep Jack away from them, because it was known to ward him off. And that eventually spread, and people started saying that it also warded off other spirits. So around the time when people are commemorating their dead and communicating with them, people put out their turnip candles, turnip lanterns, to ward off spirits and keep them safe. And over time, Jack of the Lantern eventually became Jack-o'-lantern. I'm sure that's easy to see how that happened. And then it spread from there, and people in England started doing it too. And I read somewhere that in England they used large beets, but I couldn't find a picture of that anywhere. I can just find old creepy turnips. And in Ireland, they did also use potatoes. It wasn't just turnips. But I guess potatoes aren't always that large, so it was mostly turnips. And it didn't become pumpkins until the tradition traveled to America. And I don't know why. I guess Americans, maybe we grow pumpkins better over here, or maybe we just like pumpkins. They're bigger, so it's easier to carve. I don't know. But Americans made it into pumpkins, and now we have today's jack-o'-lanterns. I really enjoyed looking up both of those because it's two things that I've never really questioned before, and now that I know, I think, like, why would I never question that before? How would I not wonder where Halloween or jack-o'-lanterns came from? They're really weird if you think about it, you know? So it was really fun to see how we came to these traditions, and also awesome to see how long they've been going. I don't know why, I just thought it was really neat that people are still following these traditions that came from a long, long time ago. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one with me. Happy Halloween. And that ends our spooky season. I'll see you next month for a whole new theme. Look forward to that, and see you later. That thing is so loud. Thanks, Grandma.